Really, really good job. Proud of you.
Cool.
Really, really nice job.
You're not fully proud, kinda.
Listen, no, I'm
kinda proud.
Look, for your flip side, it was a perfect no, but you made plays, you operated, like, so it's just stacked.
I love when you tell the facts, dude. You know, but it's okay. It's okay.
Listen, you did a nice job, okay? So just take what you learned from tonight, apply it to the joint practices, and then the next preseason game. All right?
You were the real player now. I'm gonna bring that sauce to you.
I know you will. I know you will. Really good job.
Give him some time. He can be a surgeon. And some of the throws he made, and he only had the one sack where he almost got it back to the line of scrimmage. It wasn't an 8, 9, 10-yard loss. It was, 2 yards? And he almost got it back to the line of scrimmage. He got the ball out. He showed touch. When he had to let it rip, he did. He had the one bad throw when the linebacker sunk in the hook zone, and he picked it off. Okay, that happens. Baker had a bad pick against the Bills and turned that game a couple weeks ago.
Shedeur he's a very impressive young man. He's poised, he's calm, he's smart. You can tell that he's been raised by, really quite honestly, a Hall of Fame dad. It was. Look, we're going to get to know him even more over the course of the spring, but he's really impressive.
The Cleveland Browns just pulled off a series of roster moves that are sending shockwaves across the entire NFL, and the timing tells you everything you need to know about what's really going on inside that franchise. General Manager Andrew Berry is slashing offensive linemen from the roster, scrambling to make emergency signings, and completely overhauling the protection unit that's supposed to keep Shedeur Sanders upright. Here's what should have every football fan's blood boiling. This organizational meltdown is happening right after Shedeur just suffered through the highest single-game pressure rate ever recorded in modern NFL history.
It looked like Dylan Gabriel was coming in. Sanders is off the field with his helmet off. Let's check in with Evan.
Yeah, he rushed right off the field, headed to the locker room or the tent right now. It's his pinky finger, appeared to either be his nail or the tip of the finger.
We're talking about a jaw-dropping 48% pressure rate in one game against the Chicago Bears, the absolute worst performance any quarterback has endured since ESPN started comprehensively tracking this stat back in 2009. That's not hyperbole, that's a documented fact, and it's the kind of history no organization wants their name attached to. Draft analyst Mel Kiper is sounding the alarm, and he's not alone. Passionate Browns fans are absolutely furious, and they have every right to be. Yet somehow, veterans who should have hung up their cleats years ago, practice squad players who barely know the offensive scheme, and journeyman linemen who've bounced from team to team are being tasked with protecting what anyone with eyes can see is a generational quarterback talent. This isn't just bad football anymore. This has crossed into organizational negligence that borders on malpractice. Every single layer of this disaster needs to be exposed and broken down, because the deeper you dig into this situation, the uglier it gets for Cleveland's entire front office. Now let's rewind to that post-game press conference right after the Chicago debacle, because what went down in that media room tells you everything about how this organization operates and who gets the blame when things fall apart. Shedeur Sanders walks in calm, composed, and completely professional, despite having just been pummeled for 60 minutes behind protection that wouldn't cut it in a high school game. And what do the reporters immediately jump on? His completion percentage.
Unable to throw the deep ball because it's picky.
Nah, I don't think. Nah.
What did you see in the Bills?
I wouldn't have came back if I couldn't throw.
They hammer him about how it's nearly 20 points lower than his college numbers and start building narratives about what's supposedly wrong with Colorado's golden arm. Every question is some variation of the same loaded inquiry, designed to make Shedeur defend himself and shoulder the blame for circumstances completely out of his control. How does Shedeur respond? He takes full responsibility with remarkable maturity.
Last week was building off, getting to the checkdowns. When you see it, pull it, take it, playing in rhythm, like all those different things. Like I lurk and I learn and I prove to myself, like I can do that.
Shedeur talks about making adjustments, learning the speed of NFL defenses, and committing to getting better each week. No throwing teammates under the bus, no excuses about terrible pass protection, no panic, no defensiveness. That's real leadership from a rookie quarterback who understands the politics of his position. But then, the very next day, offensive coordinator Tommy Rees steps up to the podium, and suddenly the entire narrative flips on its head. This is the exact moment alarm bells should have been ringing throughout the organization and the media covering it. Reese gets asked directly about the operational breakdowns during the game, the delayed play calls that left the offense scrambling, the confusion at the line, the unit looking completely unprepared. Instead of owning the coaching failures that are clearly his responsibility, we get a string of excuses that insult everyone's intelligence. He blames the weather. He claims the quarterback's headset malfunctioned because it was cold outside. Wait a second. A headset failure in a professional NFL game in 2024? This is the same league that plays every winter in Green Bay, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and Minnesota, where temperatures regularly plunge below freezing. We've got technology that can review every single blade of grass in crystal clear 4K resolution, but somehow the quarterback's communication system can't handle cold weather that NFL teams have been dealing with for decades. That explanation doesn't pass the smell test.
For any young player, for any young quarterback, the adjustment of playing in this league of what is open versus what's not open, what does timing look like versus waiting on things, when is it time to try to extend versus taking what might be there. You know, the completion percentages, we talked about the sack numbers very early in the year and talking about that's not solely on the offensive line.
And Tommy Reese doesn't stop there. He follows up with this direct quote that everyone needs to remember. We just got to be better as a collective group. There's not one person at fault. There's not one player at fault, one coach at fault. Oh, really? So now it's suddenly a vague collective issue with no individual accountability. But when Shedor's completion percentage drops because receivers can't catch and protection instantly collapses, when offensive drives stall because the scheme is predictable and the execution is sloppy, when points aren't going on the board because the entire system is breaking down, suddenly it's all on the rookie quarterback. That's been the consistent media narrative and organizational message for weeks. Let me get this straight. When things go catastrophically wrong on a structural level, bad play calls, late communications, blown assignments, total chaos, nobody specifically is at fault, and everyone shares equal responsibility. But when the surface-level stats dip and the box score doesn't look pretty, the blame lands squarely on Shedeur Sanders. That double standard isn't just obvious, it's glaring. It shows exactly how this organization shields coaches and veterans while leaving young players out to dry. Now let's talk about what's really happening behind the scenes in Cleveland's front office, because this is where things get truly explosive. So stay locked in, because this part matters. Owner Jimmy Haslam is finally starting to see the dysfunction happening inside his own building, the chaos he's been bankrolling for years, and now he's reacting with the kind of urgency that should have been there from the start. The Browns have been frantically signing new players all week, and when you sign players to fill roster spots, you have to cut existing ones. Simple math. That's why we're seeing offensive linemen getting dropped in what seems like random fashion. The headlines capture the fan reaction perfectly. Browns cut rookie linemen in a baffling move that has fans absolutely livid. This isn't routine roster management or normal personnel turnover. This is full-blown damage control, and it might already be too late to prevent lasting consequences. Some fans are understandably frustrated because they're not seeing the full picture of what's actually going on behind the curtain. Let me break down exactly what's happening behind the organizational curtain. Andrew Berry isn't making these moves because he wants to, or because this was the plan all along. He's being forced to make them by ownership and circumstances. This isn't optional anymore. The organization knows they catastrophically failed. They know they threw Shedeur Sanders into impossible situations with the worst protection we've documented in the modern NFL. And now they're desperately scrambling to fix it before irreparable damage is done to a young quarterback's development and confidence. This is about frantically trying to stop the bleeding before it permanently derails a franchise quarterback's career. And yes, the clock is already ticking with each passing week of inadequate protection and organizational chaos. Now let's talk specifically about who was actually protecting Shedeur against the Bears, because the individual names matter tremendously here. Pay close attention to this roster breakdown. At left tackle, you had Cam Robinson, a journeyman who joined the team late in the season with minimal time to learn the system and build chemistry. At left guard, Joe Bitonio, a solid, respected veteran, but he can't physically block 5 people at once, no matter how hard he tries. At center, Luke Whippler. Right guard was Zach Zinter, another late addition, still learning assignments. And at right tackle, Jedrick Wills, who's been inconsistent at best throughout his entire career. But wait, it actually gets exponentially worse when you look at the full reality. The actual starting five that took the field that day featured even more chaos and instability. Cam Robinson, Joel Bitonio, Luke Whippler, DeJuan Jones sliding around between positions he's not comfortable playing, and Jermaine Afidi at right tackle. Then rookie Jerron Christian had to come into the game as an emergency center after yet another injury forced more shuffling mid-game. Have you seen the pattern yet? Understanding the disaster unfolding here? These were absolutely not the players who opened the season as the intended first-string offensive line. Most of them joined late, rotated in mid-season as emergency replacements, or started the year in backup roles never expecting to play meaningful snaps. That means Shedeur Sanders is standing in the pocket behind third stringers, practice squad call-ups who were bagging groceries months ago, and emergency fill-ins who barely know the playbook, all while trying to survive against professional NFL defensive fronts specifically designed to destroy quarterbacks. People joke online and call them gym teachers and part-time plumbers, and while that's obviously exaggerated for comedic effect, the underlying reality is genuinely ridiculous and unacceptable. This is a top draft pick, a quarterback universally labeled as franchise talent with legitimate NFL ability, and this is the protection plan Cleveland's front office came up with? This is the infrastructure they're comfortable surrounding him with? Come on, Cleveland, this can't possibly be the professional standard you're satisfied with. Now here's where things get truly explosive, so stay locked in because this part matters. There are persistent whispers, and these are coming from multiple sources with direct knowledge of that locker room environment, that not everyone on the offensive line is giving full effort on every single snap. I'm not definitively saying that anyone is intentionally sabotaging anything or deliberately trying to get Shedeur hurt. That would be a serious accusation requiring concrete proof. But when you watch the game film over and over, when you see blocking assignments missed completely, when effort levels look noticeably uneven between different players on different plays, legitimate questions naturally arise that deserve investigation and answers. Then you've got Jerry Jeudy consistently struggling with dropped passes, balls hitting him directly in the chest or hands that aren't being secured. Is that Sanders' fault as the quarterback? Absolutely not by any reasonable standard. But when the offense stalls and drives fail to produce points, who gets blamed every single time without fail? The quarterback. And let's address the quiet chatter that's been circulating too, the whispers that most media members won't touch publicly. There have been multiple reports of offensive linemen making comments about Shedeur's playing style, about him being a celebrity quarterback who gets too much attention, about the outside noise and media coverage he generates. But here's the question nobody seems willing to ask directly. If you're an offensive lineman getting beaten consistently week after week in your individual matchups, shouldn't your focus be entirely on winning your assignments and protecting your quarterback?
Instead of worrying about what he's doing away from the facility or how much media attention he receives, just saying what everyone's thinking but won't say out loud. But here's the twist that far too many people keep deliberately ignoring, and this is where the objective facts force you to defend Shedeur Sanders regardless of any preconceived notions you might have. Despite all this organizational chaos, despite facing documented historic pressure rates, despite offensive linemen missing blocks and receivers dropping perfectly thrown passes, Shedeur is still consistently making plays. He's still delivering accurate throws while literally getting hit during his throwing motion. He's still showing the poise and composure under fire that made him a highly regarded prospect in the first place. That's not a quarterback who's a bust. That's not someone who can't handle NFL competition. That's a legitimate competitor being systematically failed by his own organization's incompetence. And Mel Kiper sees it with perfect clarity. He came out publicly and stated emphatically that the Browns absolutely must prioritize the offensive line in the 2025 draft as their #1 organizational need. Not more patchwork fixes or bargain free agent signings. Make it the top priority above everything else. As Kiper put it, when you see genuinely good offensive line play, it positively impacts literally everything else on offense. And he's absolutely right about that. A clean pocket fundamentally changes the entire offensive operation. Receivers have adequate time to get separation from coverage. The quarterback can work methodically through progressions without being rushed into bad decisions. The running game finally has room to breathe and generate explosive plays. The offensive line is the foundation of everything successful offenses accomplish. Without that foundation, you get exactly what Cleveland is showing right now: complete, systematic failure. Now let's talk about what absolutely has to happen next for this organization, because this part is genuinely critical to Shedor's future and Cleveland's competitiveness. The Browns have multiple first-round picks coming up in the draft, and somehow, inexplicably, some people are still floating the idea of using one on another quarterback. Let me be crystal clear about this. That would represent one of the worst decisions this franchise has ever made in its dysfunction-filled history. They don't need another quarterback. They desperately need to build proper infrastructure around the talented one they already have. Use those first-round picks on elite offensive line prospects. Get Shedeur a left tackle who can actually protect his blind side against NFL edge rushers. Get him a right guard who can hold up against legitimate NFL pass rushers instead of getting instantly beaten. Invest in offensive line talent like it actually matters, because it demonstrably does matter more than anything else. Then invest significantly in weapons. Bring in a legitimate #1 receiver who can consistently catch the football when it hits their hands. Not more practice squad depth pieces, not more stopgap veterans. Real elite talent that changes defensive coverage schemes. Some analysts have even floated that the Browns should consider packaging multiple picks to trade for an established star receiver. Imagine what this offense would look like with someone like Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb on the outside, creating mismatches. It sounds wild and expensive, but that's genuinely the level of talent Shedeur needs surrounding him, not receivers who consistently struggle to secure passes that hit them directly in the chest. If this explosive breakdown of Andrew Berry's panic moves and the systematic failure surrounding Shedeur Sanders has you as outraged as it should, you absolutely need to smash that like button right now. Drop a comment with your honest take on whether Cleveland can actually fix this disaster, or if they're going to waste generational talent. And make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on, because this situation is developing rapidly. Roster moves are happening daily, and we'll be here providing honest analysis that exposes organizational dysfunction instead of making excuses for it. This is the content that tells the truth. Hit subscribe immediately.